Jason, Antonio.
Mayor Tolley, I guess when it comes to spending, last night, Councillor Looning made the point that there is a ton of spending coming out of reserves. Just wondering, you know, how appropriate you think it is to use reserves to fund projects.
I think if there are important projects that the city of MooseJaw needs, then it's a wise choice to use some money that we have in reserve. That's why we built these reserves, so that when we were faced with projects that needed attention and needed a budget to provide them, that we were able to do that. And the good planning that was done many years ago to build our reserves is putting us in a position where we're able to do that. We're thankful for that. So yeah, I think you look at each project individually, and when we've got near unanimous choices made that it's a good way to spend our money, we vote that way, I think it's a good project. We can certainly use reserves for that.
I guess, how sustainable do you think it is in the long run to use reserves?
Well, Mr. Acker's done an excellent job as our Director of Finance, and we've invested very smartly over the last few years, and we've made good income on our reserves. So in other words, they've provided us with a good return on investment. And I hear people all the time in the community saying, I've been living here for many years, I've been paying taxes for many years, and when is MooseJaw going to get some stuff? We want stuff here in MooseJaw. We want things to do. We want facilities. I don't know how many times I've heard in the last year people ask me, when are we building some pickleball courts? Well, we're building some pickleball courts, so I think we're responding to the needs in the community.
And I guess lastly, Brian Acker talked about how there's a gaping hole of 2.3 million because of the one-time federal pandemic funding, and then there's a hole of 300,000 because of the lack of reduction in provincial municipal revenue sharing. So that's 2.6 million for a hole.
Yeah.
Since it's like gaping hole, wouldn't you think it'd be more responsible to reduce spending instead of attempting to, you know, continue to just spend more and things like that?
Well, we're not looking at it as spending. We're looking at it as investments. We're trying to invest in our city so that the people that live here and pay taxes are happy with what we've got to do here, what we got for facilities, what we got for activities, and we want to grow this city. The federal government's been in a poor position financially because of COVID. The provincial government's in a poor position because of COVID. So therefore, the transfers coming down to us as a municipality have been affected by that. Luckily, in MooseJaw here, we've invested well over time to build reserves. We've got access to money at a fairly low interest rate. And we don't see it as simply just spending money to spend money. We're trying to invest in our community to try and grow our community.
Thanks, Jason. On to Sean.
I guess first with Mayor Tolley, obviously about a 5.5% tax increase. Probably not going to be all that popular. So how would you justify such a large tax increase?
Well, Sean, 2 years ago, when COVID hit, the council at the time, and of course with administration driving the ship, they held the tax increase to zero. Then last year they implemented a 2.8% increase. And now this year we're faced with a 5.45 increase. So if you average that over 3 years, that's about 2.8% per year over the 3-year period. I think that's in line with inflation, maybe a bit below inflation. So I think we've done a pretty good job over that 3-year period of dealing with the problem of governments with a COVID situation. And we also, for many, many years, MooseJaw had a 0% increase. And that left us behind a little bit in terms of infrastructure. All Canadian municipalities are suffering from a lack of infrastructure funding. We're probably not as bad as some, but better than others. But what we're doing now is we're still playing catch up. We still have major work going on in terms of our cast iron water and sewer replacement. And so I think all in all, the taxpayers will look at this as, over a 3-year period, a 2.8% increase per year is not too bad.
I guess a lot of new initiatives came out of this budget as well. Is there a particular initiative that you're particularly excited about or happy about?
Well, when people talk to the mayor, they talk to councillors, they typically gripe about what's bothering them, and they try and put a bug in your ear about, make changes. So I heard all through the fall about how people couldn't get rid of their leaves and the yard cleanup. So we've extended weekly garbage collection into October. So when people are doing their fall cleanup, that's a direct response to people coming to councillors and to the mayor and to the administration and asking for that. People have been asking for pickleball courts. Many MooseJaw residents have spent quite a bit of time down in southern United States. They've been introduced to the game. They fell in love with the game. They've stayed home now more because of the COVID, and they wanted pickleball courts. We're building an excellent pickleball facility, and we're also doing it next to our Kinsman Pool Arena complex. So we're going to get some benefit of twinning with that facility. People tell me almost daily about feral cats in their neighborhood. Well, we've put some money into the MooseJaw Humane Society to do a spay and neuter program. We've launched some green initiatives. We know that we have to reduce our imprint. We as a city have to, the province does, the country does. So we started down that path to spend some money at the front end to eventually make savings through green initiatives. We're modernizing the IT part of MooseJaw City. It's only not that many years ago that MooseJaw actually changed over to Microsoft and modernized a lot of the things that we do here. And this is yet another addition to what we're doing to make ourselves more efficient and therefore save staff time, efficiency, and more accuracy. We've ensured the success of 4th Avenue Bridge. The 4th Avenue Bridge is an icon in our city in terms of its beauty, but it's also a vital link between the South Hill and the downtown. So the money that we've dedicated to that is an investment in our future. We're going to repair that bridge structurally, and we're going to put it back to being a beautiful bridge. And we've built on our economic development department by a new position, a coordinator position, working with the city and with the Downtown Business Association, so that we're getting more bang for our buck. Both organizations are going to benefit both the city and the downtown business, and the whole business citizenship of MooseJaw. Everybody that does business is going to benefit by more people working in our economic development department. So I see these as investments in the future and responding to the needs of the community, and that's why I'm thinking that we've done a pretty good job based on the times we're facing.
I guess finally, and this is probably more for Mr. Puffalt, but the Director of Financial Services mentioned there was no revenue growth in the past year. Obviously, some of that is out of your control, but is there anything within the city's control to maybe avoid something like this happening in the future, to avoid some of these tax increases like this?
Well, certainly revenue sharing, there's a formula that's taken into account, as I think I've maybe mentioned before. I was part of those negotiations in 2007. And at that time it was, well, we'll share when the revenues are up, but you're going to have to take a little bit of a hit when the revenues are down. And I mean, that's only fair when you make an agreement with the province like that, that you have to be prepared when the economy is down is you share. And it's a lot easier if it's based on a formula as compared to the province coming down as they have done in the past and take, money like they did in 2017. That was a couple of $1 million they took out of MooseJaw's budget at that time. And the other one, honestly, it was a lot of good work by administration and council to keep that $2.1 million that we received from the federal government for the restart funding. We received that in 2020, and we were able to, with everything that we did, including getting a zero mill rate increase in 2020, we were able to keep that money for 2021. But we could not find a way to keep any of that money for 2022, and so that's why we had overall little bit of revenue growth. But if you look at our property taxes, those came up well. We had some assessment appeals come back in our favor, so we did have some growth. It was as the as Director of Finance said, it was more that these probably certainly the one-time restart funding was, we couldn't find a way to save any more of it as we did. And then the agreement that we have with the province is that you go down when they go down. And so we know under that agreement, it's been substantial money, more money flowing to the cities since that agreement was signed. This is, I think, maybe the first year since 27 that we've actually gone down substantially. So, I mean, it's a great agreement. And, you know, when the whole world is suffering from COVID, we have to take our share of it. But I think, as his worship said, in 2020, we found a way to get a 0 mill rate increase, keep that money to 2021. So, you know, we think we did, you know, exceptional job of providing the assistance to the community when we really needed it the worst, which was 2020.
Thanks, Sean. Robert?
Good afternoon, Your Worship. I'd like to ask the question, go back to that the spay and neuter program you put $15,000 into. You said that's to control feral cats, or was that, because that was never ever mentioned in the presentation by the Humane Society, that they wanted to prevent animals from coming into their facility. So my question would be, feral cats is really the responsibility of Scraps and MooseJaw. So would you look at that maybe next year, providing them funding for a spay and neuter program?
Well, I have an annual contribution. Every time I see Scraps has a fundraiser of some kind, buy a calendar or contribute in some way, I contribute. So I'm certainly behind Scraps. I think they're two organizations. They're both doing good work. They're both working on things from a slightly different angle. Scraps, as I understand, is trapping cats and then neutering them and then releasing them. The Humane Society, I think, is probably holding the animals further for adoption. But I perhaps misspoke. The MooseJaw Humane Society did not speak during its budget submission to us about feral cats. I was using my own words there. They certainly didn't come from the Humane Society. They simply want the ability to spay and neuter more animals so that we have less animals in the community. And if you want more information about how they're going to use the money, I would suggest that you speak to the executive director of the Humane Society.
Thank you.
Robert, before we ask you, sorry, Robert, before we ask you next question, after you ask the question, can you mute your mic? I think it's getting feedback on the mayor's answers. Yeah.
Sorry for that. I didn't realize that. I'm going to ask you, what sort of consideration did you give when you were thinking about less fortunate people in the city when it comes to paying these taxes? And when I say less fortunate, we just had that in that survey, that how many people have been affected by COVID. You know, we're still in that. Can you respond to that, please?
Well, I'm concerned, like all of our citizens are, when we see people outside that we think we worry, or do they have a place to go? And so to that end, I've spoken to the MooseJaw Police Department about their role and what they're doing, and I've spoken to the John Howard Society about their role and the things that they're doing. So it's a team approach as a community. No one organization is going to be able to address all the issues of people that are that appear to be homeless and on the streets. From what I understand from my discussions, most people that we see that look homeless and are on the streets, most of those people do have someplace to go. And so certainly we're all concerned when we see people, it's cold out, and we see people outside. And then the other part of your question perhaps is related to people that are on fixed income and are trying to live in their home independently, and they're paying taxes, and their taxes are increased by 5.45%. We're not immune to you know, to feeling that that's a difficult thing for people, and we want people to be able to stay in their own homes. I believe that Finance Director Brian Acker talked about a typical home in MooseJaw being a value of about $200,000, and that the increase for a homeowner like that would be in the neighborhood of just under $90 per year. So when I thought of that, I thought if we can invest all of this money in MooseJaw and do all of these good things for our community, and it's going to take cost a typical homeowner less than $90 per year. I think it seems like it's a good trade-off, a good investment. And then, of course, some of our homeowners have very a lot higher taxes than that. They'll be paying, of course, a lot more than that. Some will be paying less, but on average, for an average homeowner, that seems to be a number that I could agree with.
And yeah, just getting back to that, when it comes to some of these poorer people, like, and I'm not saying everybody's in that same boat, but it seems like with the COVID, we have more people that would fit into that. You know, we're thinking, you know, maybe some neighborhoods that aren't traditionally seen as poor, people lost jobs, they've been roofed, their businesses have been hurt. Like, what kind of consideration do we have for them? Because I'll be honest with you, I'm hearing it from them today.
Yeah, well, we're trying to grow this city to create more business that creates more jobs, that provides an opportunity for whoever wants to work. Currently, the Thunder Creek Pork Plant on Lillooet has informed us at City Hall that they have 30 job vacancies. So if you're somebody out there that's saying, I can't afford to pay my taxes, get over and apply at Thunder Creek Pork and see if you can't get a full-time permanent job with them. Good paying jobs, good benefits. So I'm not on here to tout Thunder Creek Pork over the rest of our employers, but what we're trying to create in MooseJaw is to grow the city and create a scenario where there's more jobs to choose from, and families can move here and have jobs and be able to buy a house and send their kids to school and pay their taxes. And so we see these tax increases as an investment in our community, looking for longer term better results for the community.
And I guess another follow-up. Oops, sorry.
Okay, well, just quickly, Robert, then we're going to go back to any other follow-ups here.
Yeah, just to follow up here, last night, or last evening, I guess, Councillor Looning had mentioned maybe that $35, you know, increase in the surcharge, you know, for the cast iron. I mean, that would generate $600,000, which if you put into our taxes, that'd be a tax increase of 2%. Why couldn't we just use some of that, just good investment money that we made to pay that and give people a bit of a break? And then everybody would get the same break, huh?
Yeah, well, we did, perhaps Mr. Acker or Mr. Puffalt could answer a little bit more. I believe we voted and approved a standard $100 per year per home project, which is years and years ago, there was an introduction of a thing called a basic or home tax that so everybody would pay some certain minimum amount. And I believe my mother and some of her friends marched in opposition to it way back. But a little bit of tax applied across the board to every home, to me, makes some sense in terms of being able to pay for things like the cast iron and our streets and roads and whatnot. It seems to me that when the group that was formed, what would be that, 2 elections ago, Robert, where there was a cast iron group that basically the community spoke and said that they wanted across the board support from everybody to pay for the cast iron rather than leaving it up to individual homeowners to pay the total cost. So I'm behind initiatives like that where everybody shares in the cost as opposed to individuals having to get a real big tax bill when they particularly have their water replaced in front of their home.
Well, and with regards to that specific $100, 3 years ago, there was a $100 fee on everybody's property taxes to pay for the hospital. And I'm not sure how long ago that went. That actually it was discontinued, I believe, in 2018. And Council of the Day decided that we wanted to develop a dedicated infrastructure fund. And so what the proposal is that people were at a level of taxes, and let's keep that level of taxes and take that $100 that was going to the hospital and put it towards the cast iron program. So it's really, it took us 3 years to get there. I think initially we had looked at $100 right off the bat, but we wanted to take a little bit of time to get there. The beauty of that fund is that it's totally dedicated to cast iron. I mean, that money is specifically for that, doesn't go anywhere else in the city's budget. It just stays and helps to contribute to the cast iron program. And I think that when it comes to reserves, we have to be prudent on how we take money out of there. I mean, we just had a discussion about we should take more money out of reserves and then we shouldn't take money out of reserves. And so I think we always try and find a balance and recommend to council that, when we are able to, like we did this year, we have excessive earnings as his worship says, and as we've proven last night, that we are, in essence, we're self-financing our equipment reserves to some degree by taking 500,000 out of the equipment reserve and putting it back into to reducing our operating contribution to the equipment reserve. So we are doing that to some degree already. So I mean, we have to be careful. We're treating the reserves, which, as his worship says, and I've been in other places, is that we are the best financed city in Saskatchewan by far, and we use that money as, in my mind, a little bit of a foundation basis. Is we take the interest we earn and we use it where we need to and reduce property taxes. So we did that this year a bit. We have to be careful that we maintain our principal stays there and we don't lose that. And so I think, as you may or may not have seen, we actually have that 100 million now is up to 104 million, because that takes into account inflation. And we're taking out areas in reserves that are designated for specific purposes. For example, the land development reserve, we're using that to pay for the official community plan. Well, the official community plan is the basis of how we sell land in the first place and how we accumulate money for the land development. So it really is a proper use of that reserve for that. So again, it's very much a balancing act, and that's what we try and do. We know from this fall and the survey that we put out, people did not want us to cut recreation services again. We lived that in 2020. Nobody enjoyed that. In fact, 60-some% of the people that responded said that was the worst impact they had of COVID. So those are all the things we have to do when we try and balance a budget and bring it forward. And there's, again, if people are having issues, and we know that we're trying to look after the community as a whole. We have part-time jobs available at Mosaic, and we'd be glad for people to apply there and maybe make some extra cash if they need. We know the Great Plains Power Station is short 30 people as well, and they're ramping up this year. So I think, as his worship says, we're working really hard to create opportunities for people, and there's open positions right now if people need some help.
Okay, we got about 3 minutes left before the mayor has to get to another appointment, and I guess Robert did already ask a follow-up, so we'll go to Jason if you have one more.
Yep. Jim, I guess, can you answer how the monitoring stations are going to reduce costs in the buildings?
Yeah, what they're going to do is the monitoring stations, there's part of the climate action plan, which I'm very excited about. As I said last night, it's the right thing to do, and then there's a practical application that we've shown in the statistics. So what it's going to do is look at absolutely everything that's used in the building, and every motor and everything that runs. I mean, I don't know if you can see behind me, but that light there is something that uses a ton of power. And so that's one thing that we have to evaluate. There's 1 million fans running through all our buildings. So what it's going to do is look and see where our power usage is and analyze those areas, and then find ways to correct that and reduce our power consumption. And as we talked about last night, after we get over the initial repayment of the capital investment, there's about $250,000 in utility savings every year. And that's substantial money that we can put certainly to better things. And Derek Blay would be glad to sit down with you and talk about this in depth, because we very much believe that this is a really important program that's going to make a difference for us.
Thanks. Sean, do you have anything else?
Yeah, just quickly, there's a lot of talk about building towards a business improvement district. My understanding is MooseJaw had one in the past, didn't go over very well. What does the city feel like that this will be successful in the future?
And who are you directing that to, Sean?
I guess Mayor Tolley, if you want to.
Okay. Well, I can remember 2 iterations of this in the past. One was called the BID, or the Business Improvement District, and one was called the Downtown Business Association, I think, DBA, I think it was called. And those things, I wouldn't say they were not successful. I think that they were partially successful, and then they just kind of petered out. And we as a city council and as city administration want to respond to the needs of our community. And the Downtown Business Association that's being formed now, or is formed, and they've been working, I shouldn't say they're being formed now, they are working and doing a lot of good things. They came to us with an idea that they would like some funding to create a position to work for them and with them to improve the Downtown Business Association. So we in the city here know that we're so involved in economic development, and that our economic development director is really, really busy and needs some help as well. So we went back to them and said, what about if we combine these positions and we create an economic development coordinator, somebody who will provide the office space for and some supports, administrative supports, and will work with you about who gets hired, what their job is about, how they work, and we get the benefit of this person working for both organizations. So we're trying to respond to our community and also respond to the needs of City Hall. We want to grow the city. Economic development is the way you do that. Our economic development officer, Jim Dixon, is doing a real good job. He's too busy. He needs help. The Business Association needs help. So we're combining those positions, and we hope to see down the road the fruit of that labor.
Okay, thanks everybody. I know the mayor has to shoot off to another appointment right now, as well as city manager. So if there's any follow-ups, by all means, send an email. If you have any further requests, we'll be happy to answer.